What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Football Game Show brought to you by Front Yard Fantasy. I'm your host, Simon, joined today by our special guest here to talk some free agency with us, our great friend, Seth Woolcock. Seth, thank you so much for joining us today, my friend.
Simon, thanks for having me on, man. I'm feeling good. I finally caught my breath a little bit from this free agency frenzy, fallout, whatever you want to call it. 70 degrees out here in the Lancaster County side today. Tarp was off. I was running down that road chasing some Amish buggies, so I'm feeling good. Glad to be here in the afternoon talking a little football with you.
Oh, we're ready to go, baby. And it was a weird experience, this free agency period for me, because I spent like 4 to 6 hour chunks of it on airplanes without Wi-Fi. And so I would land, and then the entire NFL would be different. And then like, okay, we're good. Then I'd get back on a plane and land, and the whole fucking fantasy landscape different again. And so at a certain point, I was just like, I'm not checking on layovers. I'm just checking at the end of the flight, and then we'll reassess because it's just too much snip snap going on in between.
You're hoping you didn't go in a wormhole and end up in some different total reality while you were on that plane, I'm thinking.
Exactly. I didn't land in an alternate San Antonio. I landed in the right San Antonio. We got some people in the chat ready for today's show. Hyped to have Seth on here with us. For those of you that do not know Seth, you should go and follow him on Twitter right now at between_SethFF. And make sure you're following IBT_media as well. Seth is the founder of IBT Media, covering fantasy football and NASCAR himself, but you're covering a whole slew of sports over there on top of that, right, Seth?
Yeah, man, it doesn't really stop. As soon as the football season ends, the PGA season is here, the NASCAR season is here as well, and all the other motorsports we could count. So we stay busy, but we stay plugged in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, John, Luke, and Joey are not going to be able to join us today.
Those bastards.
JL came down with an illness at the last second. He actually caught the illness rescuing the Crown Prince of Segovia, though. There was a whole jamon put in front of him, and JL noticed it was poisoned and consumed the entire thing before the prince could even take a bite. Luckily, JL has that Sicilian stomach, that fortitude that kept him alive, but he is feeling mentally and emotionally ill from consuming an animal into his vegetarian belly, physically ill from the poison that was in it. Joey is holding his hair back while he vomits, and that's why Joey can't be here, though.
Hey, that is okay. I wonder if JL also found the Princess of England. She's been missing apparently as well. There's some news on the internet about her going around. So I imagine I wonder if JL can stumble his way in there as well.
It's probably why he'll miss next week. So. We got some people in the chat ready for today. Andrew stopping by saying the best move in free agency is the one Dallas Oh, wait. Didn't they make a move today? I think I saw they finally signed a free agent from another team. No big signing, but I believe they did it.
All in, baby. All in.
They got it done. We got Matt in the chat with zing and then saying got to be Kirk to Atlanta or Mac Hollins to Buffalo. Oh, yeah. We're going to talk a lot of Mac Hollins today.
Love Mac Hollins.
Dave in here. What's up, Dave? Welcome into one of our favorite Canadians. And then hashtag IBT representing always. We got Dustin in here saying, what's up, fellas? And wants to know where are the other two knuckleheads in Segovia, unfortunately.
They will be missed.
We got Dame stopping by. Hello, FYF fam. What's up? Welcome. And Scampers saying hello, Simon and Seth. And we got our buddy Geek stopping by as well. What's up, Geek?
There we go. I got to say, I met Scampers and his lovely wife on the top of a rooftop last year in Canton, Ohio. I was about 3 shits to the wind before I realized it was Dame and Scampers. I was like, oh my, like it was a full circle moment. So I'm always blessed to have them, the IBT family chat. Glad to see him over here on FYF as well today.
Me, Tim, Dame, and Scampers had a burned into my memory karaoke moment after leaving a bar. We left a little bit early.
Yeah.
Walking home, and we just heard music coming from inside the stream and walked in. There was 8 people, completely empty. Tim, double-fisted microphone, singing Fall Out Boy on the stage. And
here we go.
Dame and Scampers, you're forever locked into my mind with that. I see we got some questions in here as well before we start. You want to hit this trade question, Seth, before we get into our free agency chat?
Yeah, what do we got? Some movement.
Uneasy Allies, welcome in, my friend. Said, hey there, I've been offered in a 10-team Superflex league, and I'm torn. Trade away Justin Jefferson to receive Puka Nacua, DJ Moore, and Kirk Cousins. Woo! That's a big boy offseason trade, Uneasy. You've got some league mates who don't know what to do with their time now that the football season is over, and so they're sending things like this. But I don't know if it's unfair. Seth, which side of this would you be rolling?
I think context matters here a lot, Simon. I will say I don't play in a lot of 10-team leagues anymore, so I think that changes the value a little bit. I think that makes Jefferson a little bit more of a value here. But holy hell, is that a haul? That really is a haul. I think it depends on easy. Like, what does your team look like right now? Do you have some holes you can plug? If you feel like you're still pretty top heavy and you have enough depth to get you through, I probably wouldn't move the number one player or one of the number one players in that format. I'd probably just hang tight. But if you have holes to fill, if you don't have a lot of depth, go ahead and do it. You're getting 2 wide receiver ones potentially back, and Kirk Cousins down there in Atlanta now as well.
God, it's so tough. Josh down here, I think echoing my thoughts. What's up, Josh? He says that's a tough one. It's a decent offer for Jefferson in a 10-team league. I'm still going to lean Jefferson.
Yeah.
If this move sets you over the top, I might do it. Star power is ever so important in a 10-team league, but man, you've got arguable star power on the other side as well, and Puka Nacua and DJ Moore. It's not Justin Jefferson elite player star power, but God, like you throw Caleb Williams into that Bears offense and DJ Moore, who has shown us he can be a wide receiver one in fantasy multiple times now. Like, I'm not convinced he can't do it with a rookie quarterback in Chicago.
Well, and everyone was worried too in free agency. Calvin Ridley might be joining the Bears. We were kind of hearing those rumors around the internet a little bit. Turns out to be false. Unless they add someone in the draft, like we've heard Malik Neighbors' name thrown out. I think Hoove over on the IBT website, he put out in his latest mock draft. He actually has Marvin Harrison Jr. going to the Bears with their second pick. So anything could happen, but unless they land one of those big fish in the NFL draft, I think DJ Moore is probably going to be a locked and loaded low-end wide receiver one, high-end wide receiver two without that happening.
I'm with you. This also could come down to whether or not you want to use that 101 on Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison Jr. You keep Justin Jefferson, you pretty much want to use that on Caleb Williams. But if you trade Justin Jefferson away, get Kirk Cousins in return, maybe grab Jaden Daniels or somebody with your next pick, grab Marvin Harrison with that first pick and replace Justin Jefferson. That could work as well. Man, this is brutal. I love this. Keep the trade questions coming. We love these guys. Today, we brought Seth on here to break down some of the biggest free agency moves so far from the 2024 free agency period. We've got 8 of them listed here. Obviously, there's some that are not on the list. Feel free to ask about those. We'll probably bring a couple of them up as we're chit-chatting here. We're going to vote which one is the better signing, the bigger fantasy impact, better for fantasy football. Whichever one gets the most votes is moving on to the next round. If there is a tie, we will go to the chat for you guys to decide which one moves on. So make sure you're paying attention to the polls coming in through that YouTube chat. Whichever one gets more votes from you will break whatever tie we've got in here. We got one more question from Josh before we kick this off. Josh says, I have a stacked team, absolutely stacked. Should I trade Purdy and the 102 for Josh Allen in a 12-team superflex?
God dang, these are really, really tough trades that you're throwing out there. Oh, man. Do you need Josh Allen? Do you need him? Like, who's your other quarterback, Josh? Let us know maybe in the chat who else you're rolling out there in your super flex, because that 102, that could be Marvin Harrison Jr. And if you're telling me a Marvin Harrison Jr. and a Brock Purdy combo over Josh Allen, I think I'd rather have that side, but really, really tough.
Man, and people talk about maybe the struggles Josh Allen has had, or he didn't look that great from like a football perspective last year, and they made all these cuts. It's going to be a different look. He was still the number one fantasy quarterback, was he not? Like, he's still an elite fantasy football option, even if that's going on. I think I got to roll with Josh Allen in that situation as well.
Okay.
And I just don't know how to value Brock Purdy properly in Dynasty. I don't like. I can see the argument for this being a fair trade and wanting the Purdy side, but I just tend, like, if there's an elite player on the other side, I'll cash in on Purdy.
Yeah. It seems like he has a stacked team too, so window is open for Josh. So if Allen's going to put you over the top, man, maybe go ahead and do that.
Let's do it. Well, let's get into it, guys. Before we do that, one more reminder to follow our friend Seth over on Twitter. That's it, between_SethFF. Not only are you going to get those hot fantasy football tips, but it's NASCAR season, baby. And Seth is in the weeds, making sure you're getting those best tips, putting out some betting advice for you. Damn near every day on your Twitter, I feel like I'm seeing it come out, Seth.
Dude, we're in the fucking trenches right now, Simon. I got whacked last week, so trying to be a little more conservative, be a little more patient, get some practice, some qualifying times down this weekend before I get too heavily invested. But yeah, dude, NASCAR does not sleep, and we're covering a bunch of series now, so I apologize to anyone who is on my profile for fantasy football advice. The algorithm is mixed up a little bit. I have confused it, so apologies there.
He's getting it done, though. Before we get into this, a reminder, if you like what we're doing here, you enjoy games, you enjoy fantasy football, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Front Yard Fantasy. Let's get into this, though. Our very first matchup, the 1 seed versus the 8 seed. We've got probably the biggest story in free agency, I would imagine, is Kirk Cousins signing with the Atlanta Falcons, going up against Gabe Davis, longtime wide receiver 2 there in Buffalo, signing with the Jaguars, replacing Calvin Ridley is what it seems like. Seth, I'm going to let you vote first on this one. Which of these do you think is the bigger fantasy impact? Kirk Cousins to the Falcons or Gabe Davis to the Jaguars?
Listen, I know we're talking fantasy football here, Simon, but betting also plays a role into fantasy football and the decisions we make. And dude, like Kirk Cousins just shifted some future lines heavily earlier this week when he made this decision to go to the Falcons. The Falcons are now the favorite to win the NFC South, minus money, minus 110, I think, at most books. So that just tells you about what the books and what Vegas thinks about this Atlanta Falcons team. And not only is this going to potentially give a little bit of a boost to Kirk Cousins, I think he probably still kind of remains in that, back end quarterback 1 or early quarterback 2 range. But regardless, we're going to see Drake London potentially be a top 36 player now. Kyle Pitts gets a little more life back in him. And we can actually trust Bijan Robinson a little bit more now. He's going to play for Zach Robinson, a play caller that still kind of in that McShanahan tree, if you would. A little Sean McVay, little Kyle Shanahan action there. And I think this is going to be a great move overall, man. And when you shift the betting market like that, you shift the fantasy market right with it.
Yeah, some of the sharpest fantasy players I know follow those lines whenever they're making some of these decisions. Track that movement, see what's going on, and if it jumps big, to at least pay attention. Maybe not make decisions immediately. Josh down here, I got to agree with you, says this one is funny. Yeah, if you think about who's going to make the bigger fantasy football impact, is it a guy who's been barely startable in Buffalo going down to a struggling quarterback in Jacksonville, or is it a guy who's played at a near elite level for the past 4 seasons, going to an offense that we've been begging for competent quarterback play from? I'm with you, Seth. It's got to be Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons there. And if I wasn't hyped enough already, I saw the video this morning of Kirk at his presser talking about getting the number 8 from Kyle Pitts. Did you see that video?
Yes, I did. God. Yeah, I'm excited that Mike Florio was confirmed the truth on that. So shout out Mike Florio out there in West Virginia. And I will say, shout out Gabe Davis too. Like, in best ball drafts right now, I am trying to get after some Gabe Davis in a draft I'm doing right now, Simon. Earlier today, I took Trevor Lawrence. I was hoping coming back I could do a little discount and double stack with Gabe Davis. Did not work out. Got sniped 1 pick before me. So, hey, if you're looking for a little discount and stack in your best balls, underdogs out right now. I think DraftKings about to release their offerings for 2024 as well. So consider Gabe Davis. I do like him, but not on the level of Kirko.
Yeah, I see Josh down there agreeing with you, though, saying Gabe Davis is an underrated signing, in my opinion, but we know the answer. Outside of best ball formats, is Gabe Davis a name you're going to be looking at later in drafts for a redraft or maybe as a buy low offseason dynasty target?
I'll definitely take a couple swings, I think, in some redrafts. Like, it's going to depend where the ADP falls. Like, right now, he was going outside of the wide receiver 50 range. If that still, stands the case, the good thing about Gabe Davis is at least who he was in Buffalo. You could throw him in your lineup 1 week. He might get you 0, but he might win you the week as well. I will say, I think more than anything, I like this for Travis Etienne, Simon. Gabe Davis is a hell of a blocker right now. I think Etienne, forget all the rumors that the Tank Bigsby is going to get more work and that they're going to offload Travis Etienne. They just brought back Dearness Johnson. So I see more of the same for Etienne. And now he's a great blocker and Gabe Davis out there on the outside. So I'm wheels up on Etienne, and I'll throw a couple shots at Gabe Davis here along the way.
I love that call out on Etienne. The only thing I worry about is bringing in an additional person. But if it's another Tank Bigsby type of player, like they draft someone late, I'm going to have the same opinion I did last year. And Travis Etienne is better than whatever 5th round, 4th round, 6th round running back that the Jaguars are going to draft. So I'm not concerned. I love that call. Kirk Cousins moving on. It was unanimous in the chat as well. 100% of the votes going to
chat.
Kirk. And Matt, maybe a little less optimistic on the Gabe signing, said to say Gabe Davis is Calvin Ridley's replacement is like saying I am Gabe Davis's replacement in Buffalo. Well, Matt, you might be. Might be.
Yeah, and they might still add a wide receiver in the draft here. I've heard Brian Thomas Jr. possibly going to Jacksonville. I've heard some smoke coming out of that camp. So if that's the case, it moves his ADP down a little bit more. But Hey, give a little respect to Gabe Davis here, Matt. Come on.
Put some respect on his name. Matt's at $13 million a year for an elite blocking wide receiver. Money well spent. We're going to move on to our next matchup here. I got the first vote. It is Josh Jacobs with the Packers versus Calvin Ridley signing with the Tennessee Titans. I think both of these signings are interesting. I was hoping Calvin Ridley would maybe end up somewhere with a more established passing game, but this Tennessee Titans team post Derrick Henry, especially with the decisions that they've made at their running back position, I don't know what their identity is going to be as a team, right? I don't know if this is going to be you have to imagine they're going to throw the ball more than they have in years past with Derrick Henry leading the way. But I don't know if it's enough for a player like Calvin Ridley to overcome what I view as a positive landing spot for someone like Josh Jacobs. This Packers team, with the exodus of Aaron Jones, is primed for the skill set of Josh Jacobs to just slide right in. He may not be the pass catcher that Aaron Jones was, but he's also a much better pass catcher than the Packers or than the Raiders usually used him as. And we saw it in glimpses, right? He had that one season with like 50, 60 catches. Yep. I think we slide into the Packers offense. He starts hitting that 50 catches number again, and we've got an RB1 in Josh Jacobs at the end of his career. I gotta throw my vote to Mr. Jacobs signing with the Packers here. What about you, Seth?
It's a good vote. It's a good argument, man. Josh Jacobs, his value is substantially increased. Before we were seeing him go kind of back in that third, fourth, fifth round of drafts. He's vaulted himself back into the second round conversation here in Green Bay. And like you alluded to, man, like how many times do we see Abdullah on the field last year and all these other scrubs pass catching running backs? I love me some Zamir White, but Josh Jacobs is the truth. He's that guy. I think he'll be a very great addition to this Matt LaFleur led offense. So I'm really excited for it. And Christmas came early in Tennessee, man. Mason Rudolph, as soon as he signs with the Titans, Calvin's like, got to get myself down to Tennessee. Got to get myself down there. So excited to see what Tennessee can maybe be. But you already got D-Hop there. You already got a bunch of fucking question marks in the backfield now. Tony Pollard kind of ruins Tyjae Spears. It kind of just feels like everyone's watering each other down just a little bit now there in Tennessee with a lot of question marks in that Callahan offense.
It doesn't feel pretty. When I look at that offense, it's like, I guess I'll draft DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah. I've been taking him like around like wide receiver 40 or so on Underdog. And it's like I don't feel good about it. It's kind of a consolation prize when I get.
There's just no way he finishes lower than wide receiver 40. There's not a chance in hell that he does unless he's injured.
But now that doesn't even feel great. The Calvin Ridley's there. Before you were like, well, at least he's going to get all the volume. Now, he'll still have some big days. He'll have some big touchdowns. But yeah, I just. A lot of question marks in Tennessee still, but, glad they're at least trying, unlike the Carolina Panthers in the state below, which Luke Combs has absolutely just been burying them on the internet.
Well, they're doing a pretty good job themselves. Just every time there's an announcement out of Carolina, they're piling on themselves. Josh Jacobs moving on from this one. Seth and I agree, and the chat agreed with us as well. 67% in favor of Josh Jacobs, but there was a third of the chat that was leaning the Calvin Ridley direction on this one. Interesting.
Oh, okay.
But not enough. Mr. Jacobs moves on. And I'm just so happy that I get to be excited for Josh Jacobs again this year. I don't know why. He feels like in the years where he's been good, he's been drafted later than he was supposed to be drafted. In the years when he's been bad, it's been drafted earlier than he was supposed to be. I'm curious to see where his ADP lands this year because I am excited to draft him, but I'm worried it sneaks up a little bit too high.
Yeah, with Josh Jacobs, I feel like the last couple of years, if you've been drafting him, it kind of feels like you're going to like my Aunt Dodie's house, which I love my Aunt Dodie, don't get me wrong, but I'm just going to sit there, watch some shit on some really bad quality television, might have a couple snacks, take a walk around the neighborhood. It's not fun. It's not sexy, but you do it because it's a good value. It's a good time. But I'm ready to move on past that era of Josh Jacobs and look forward to a new, potentially explosive Josh Jacobs in Green Bay.
Let's do it. Grim said Jacobs takes the carries from Dylan, though. Unfortunately, Dylan was cut by the Green Bay Packers, if I'm not mistaken. So Dylan's looking for a new home after year we tried to make the quad god happen. It just didn't happen in Green Bay.
Yeah, man. I thought AJ Dillon had a lot of potential coming in the league after what we saw at BC from him, and yeah, now he's looking for a new home out there, and like people loved him in Wisconsin too. He was such like a Wisconsinite from everything I've heard from the fans up there. So sad to see him go, but I think they kind of just combined the best of Aaron Jones and the best of AJ Dillon into one player, into one salary, and his name is Josh Jacobs.
That's a pretty good deal. I bet every team would like to take that. We're going to move on to our next matchup here. We've got Saquon Barkley signing with the Eagles versus Russell Wilson signing with your Steelers. Seth, which one of these is the better fantasy signing or the free agency move that's better for fantasy football?
Yeah, so the state of Pennsylvania making some head waves this last week, man. Look, I woke up, I went to bed on Sunday right as this news was dropping that Russell Wilson was going to be a lure, and had some mixed emotions, honestly, man. Had some mixed emotions about it because it's an upgrade over what we've had about, 26 passing touchdowns in the last 2 years compared to what Wilson had in 13, 14 games in Denver last year. 100%. I think it gives a nice boost to George Pickens. Now we got Stonehands out of the picture. Deontay Johnson banished him to the shadow realm that is the Carolina Panthers. So there is some intrigue with Russell Wilson. But realistically, this is still a team that wants to win by running the ball with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. They just signed Patrick Queen. They're going to have an elite defense once again. And Saquon Barkley's coming home, man. He's coming home. And while I think the pass catching potentially takes a hit here, being in a good offense behind a better offensive line is usually a positive for these running backs who are shifting teams. So I think Saquon Barkley is going to have a really nice season and potentially be the new face of the Eagles moving forward.
Man, that's going to be wild seeing him in an Eagles uniform, just looking at it. That's one of the ones that I'm not sure I'll ever get used to. Saquon Barkley, one vote your direction. Quick aside, you know which one? It may not be the biggest splash, but it's the one that's going to be the hardest for me to adjust to.
Yeah.
Gus Edwards not wearing a Ravens jersey anymore. Gus Edwards in a Chargers jersey. I'm not sure I'll ever get used to it. It feels so wrong for some reason, more than Saquon on the Eagles, even though that's like their biggest rival. Just Gus is a Raven in my mind.
And it's funny because he's actually back with Greg Roman. So like he could actually be relevant for fantasy. I took my shot on him in a couple drafts I've been doing right now. I was hoping Gus Edwards would actually be on this list because he's one of my favorite low-key free agent moves throughout the offseason. I think I'll have a lot of Gus Edwards this season. So I like that call out. YPC
King. The dude is, he's done nothing but be good when given the opportunity. So maybe this is the year to pay a little bit of attention to Gus in the wrong
style,
jersey.
Baby. Let's go.
I see Abitso asking us, what's y'all's team? I'm a Browns fan. Seth?
I'm a Steelers fan. So apparently we're supposed to be enemies, but I can't hate the Browns other than Deshaun Watson. So
hey, we're on the same page then. We got the same feelings about my team. My vote here, I'm agreeing with pretty much everything you said there. Saquon Barkley is an elite running back. That Eagles team, I know people are worried about touchdowns being stolen from him, but Saquon was a top 10 running back last year with 6 rushing touchdowns, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that range. And we don't know what the tush push is going to look like sans Jason Kelce, with Jason Kelce gone. They may need a goal line back more often without the secret weapon, the keystone that unlocks the tush push. Like Jalen Hurts is half of that equation, but Jason Kelce is the other half. And it could become significantly less effective, and Saquon could start eating up some of those touchdowns. So I like Saquon. I like the landing spot. And even the one criticism I've heard about it, I'm not buying into it as a valid criticism for him. Saquon moving on. Man, this is what I'm talking about, Seth. Kirk Cousins on the Falcons, Saquon Barkley on the Eagles. I got off an airplane, and I was like, what the hell is going on?
Oh, dude, this is the NFL. And it was funny because we didn't have like a lot of top 20, top 30 players move, but we had a shit ton of players in that 36 to top 100 range. And like a lot more than I was expecting, especially with the running backs. And it's like these players like Saquon and Derrick Henry and Eckler have been with one team primarily their whole career. So it is quite the shock, especially for someone who I know my girlfriend started playing in 2019, 2020. So for her, it's like, this is all she knows, and so it is crazy. And I'm sure everyone in the chat is feeling that as well.
It's like if you ever played like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, all of a sudden the meta, it's like the new set just dropped and the meta's completely switched all of a sudden. We're all just freaking out to figure out the new meta. What does Saquon on the Eagles mean? What does Eckler on the Commanders mean? What's the new running back meta, guys?
I want to play Magic the Gathering. I've heard great things about it. I don't know fuck about shit with it, but it seems like a great time. So are you a player of that, Simon? Do you dabble in that world?
In Madden?
In Magic the Gathering.
Not I am too poor to dabble in Magic the Gathering, but I played a lot of Hearthstone for years there, which is like an online similar version to Magic.
Okay.
But I have dabbled in Magic the Gathering. I just can't keep up with the metas, man. You gotta prepare a new deck every time they drop something new.
Yeah, I can believe it, man. I can believe it for sure.
But I get all worked up about all that nerdy shit. You put me in front of some Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dungeons and Dragons, I'll start I'll go down the rabbit hole.
I wish I still had my Yu-Gi-Oh cards from when I was a kid. I think I would not be making fantasy content because I'd be fucking rich. Let me tell you that. Had a lot of Pokemon, a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I was definitely a little spoiled in that realm growing up, but it was not a good saver or pristine collector over the years.
I just have loads of loose Pokemon cards in my desk drawer because whenever I'm really sad, I just buy a pack of Pokemon cards for like the serotonin boost. But then I'm like, what the hell am I going to do with these? So there's like so many loose Pokemon cards just floating around in my desk drawer.
You got a Venusaur in there? That's my favorite.
Surely Pokemon. There's a Venusaur in there somewhere. Wouldn't it be funny if I just randomly pulled out a Venusaur?
No. I actually have a little Pokemon card on my shelf, a couple Pokemon up there as well. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I can't get away from it. Even in this age, like I'm like, man, I just wish I had like a week of free time where I could just like go crush out a Pokemon emulator or something.
Dave down here said Wyatt from JWB loves MTG. Shout out JWB and Wyatt and Magic the Gathering. Dave said Digimon. I want everyone to just go look up some of the Digimon evolutions. Because Pokemon made sense. They kind of went from like small turtle, bigger turtle, large turtle with guns. Digimon would be like rabbit, human with pants and guns for arms, the lizard who speaks French. Like that would be like the evolution pattern for Digimon.
I always loved Digimon because it always seemed like a little more fucked up version of Pokemon. You know what I mean? Like it came out like Saturday mornings, you get Pokemon on bright and early, 9 a.m. and then 9:30, 10 a.m., whatever it was, Digimon would come on and the characters talk. And it was kind of weird. And like I didn't watch every episode, so I didn't follow it super well. But I was like, this still just looks sweet as fuck. I don't know what's happening, but it did look fun as hell. And are there Digimon like collectibles? I'm sure there has to be. I've never heard anyone collecting them, but I'm sure there's people out there doing it.
I'm sure there are. We're going to bring them back. Digimon collectibles are in 2024. Me, Dave, and Seth.
We're setting the market.
Digimon back.
We're getting on early. Let's go, baby.
We're going to move on to our next match. Be our last first round matchup, the 2 seed versus the 7 seed. Derrick Henry on the Ravens versus Austin Ekeler on the Commanders. I believe I got the first vote on this one. You voted first on the last one. This one hurts me a little bit because I think it is fairly easy. For as good as Austin Ekeler has been, it did seem like last year maybe we watched him legitimately lose a step for the first time. That burst that we're used to seeing from him, I feel like we didn't see on the field. Yeah. And it showed in the way that the Chargers coaching staff started using him down the stretch, right? His usage went down further and further. And it was one of those players where like at a certain point, towards the back half of the season, you started benching Austin Ekeler on the Chargers. I benched Austin Ekeler for, I can't even remember some of the names, but for like RB2s, back-end RB2s towards the back stretch of the season. And now you're going to put him on a Commanders team where we've seen limited success for Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson. I'm just not super excited. You plug Derrick Henry into an offense with Lamar Jackson as a running threat, an offense where Gus Edwards got 13 rushing touchdowns. I'm over the moon. This is a pipe dream. This is whenever you talk about like fantasy football dream scenarios and you're like, oh, can you imagine if Derrick Henry was on the Ravens? That's what just happened. My vote goes to Derrick Henry on this one.
Yeah. I've definitely had that same conversation like back in college, maybe token on something and with my buddies. Could you imagine Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson playing off ball with each other? And really cool to see him down there in Baltimore. It's a great fit, I think. And dude, like pour one out for fucking Austin Ekeler. I mean, this guy, fantasy football community darling. He's an analyst himself. He loves the game. And like, it's just sad to kind of see him fall off this quickly because you're right, Simon. Like there were tough decisions down the line that if you were playing Austin Ekeler into week 17 last year, you didn't win your championship. I would be stunned if someone in the chat, like if you won with playing Ekeler, let me know, but I have not met that person as of yet. And, like to go to the Commanders here where we have Brian Robinson Jr., who already had a pretty good last year at times, found his way into the end zone a couple times through the air too. Like he's not a bad little pass catcher. Christopher Rodriguez Jr., he's got a little bit of pop down there as well. So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag in Washington. I'm just not excited for it. And like, it sucks because I'd been taking a lot of Austin Eckler in some mocks and some best balls this offseason, like 5th, 6th round, thinking I was getting a value. And now not so much.
I was scrolling through the names trying to remember who some of those tough decisions were. And I remember I started both Steelers running backs over Austin Eckler over the back 3-4 weeks of the season. Jaylen Warren was getting work. Najee Harris was getting work. We were starting to see them put something together. Not pretty. The chat is going off on some nerd shit in here. Toronto Dave said, I had Digimon cards, if I remember correctly.
Let's
and Josh
go.
said, I like Digimon for like a year of my life. And then Josh coming in with anyone else like Beyblades, dude. We went so hard with Beyblades at my house. We had like the big launchers, not the little ones with like the screen on it that like showed it showed like your rip speed and stuff like that.
Do you have the little dome thing, the little plastic dome? I'll say this, Simon, man, I liked Beyblade so much, and then they outlawed them in my elementary school because one of my buddies who's still in my my home fantasy football league, he got someone let it rip on the table, after school. Fucking flew off the table, cut the kid's eye wide open. Beyblades were not allowed in Kane area, elementary, middle school, high school. They were outlawed, but I loved them. I love them.
I'm telling you, they're not made the same way they were when we were in elementary school. My fiance and I, in the last year, bought Beyblades at Target just for fun, just to like play with them. And those things are like falling apart now. Half the parts are plastic. I remember when I was a kid having Beyblades, and there was like a heavy metal ring in the center, and they had like borderline like knives along the outside rim. Like those things, of course they were banned at school. They should have been pre-banned at every elementary school.
Yeah, we had to move to Bakugan, which were not that fun. As much as you wanted to think they were. Not as much fun as Beyblades.
We got Hoove Tube in here. What's up, Hoove? Welcome in. Ooga booga. Welcome in. Glad to have you here. Dave said a wild Hoove appears, foaming at the mouth. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Is that what a Hoove says? Can you confirm, Seth?
I don't know. We were singing a lot of songs on Tuesday night. Had some Luke Combs going on, a little bit of Creed. I have not heard the aha from Hoove, but kids got pipes, so I wouldn't be surprised.
We missed a move while we were chatting here, Seth. Ray McLeod, superstar of the Clemson Tigers, return man extraordinaire, signed with the Falcons. They better bump those odds to win the division up a little bit more now. What do you think?
Yeah, I hope you got on before we were having this conversation. I hope you got on him because Ray McLeod, former Pittsburgh Steeler, former GOAT, he'll be missed, man. Ray has a couple boneheaded mistakes every single season in the return game. You're like, dude, just call the effing fair catch, or don't get involved there. But I do love some Ray McLeod. I'm sure you do as a Tiger graduate yourself.
I love Ray McLeod. He's so much fun to watch. And it probably would be less fun if he was on my team, like you said, but he also makes magic happen because of that same quality. Yeah. My vote's going to Derrick Henry. Seth, where's your vote going here?
Yeah, give me Derrick Henry. Sorry, Austin. Sorry, man. I really wanted it to be him.
Derrick Henry moving on. The chat was 70% on Derrick Henry here. We're going to go ahead and end that poll. The chat so far agreeing with us in full. We've only had one upset so far with Josh Jacobs going over Calvin Ridley. It's really just the value of the contract. Ridley's getting paid a little bit more, so he's getting put a little bit higher on there.
Yep.
Dave down here said, I had those heavy metal rings too, made some sparks. Yeah, you could have sparks fly when the Beyblades hit each other in the arena.
It was insane, man. Whoever came up with that idea, like, shout out to them, dude, because they probably made a bag. Like, Toys R Us had mountains, stacks of those things.
Who've said that aha was my wild Thornberry screech. Also, what a wild show. Like, who came up with the idea for that show? Just like a scientist father with a feral jungle child that they found, and a talking genius monkey live in the woods and speak with animals.
Dude, some of those, like, I want to be on whatever drugs those Nickelodeon and early Disney writers were on, because they had some ideas that were out of the effing park. And Nickelodeon especially, I mean, Cat Dog, I don't know about that one, Simon.
And that one was pretty wild. And when you watch it, it's like it was a first idea. Someone said it once and they were like, let's 10 seasons.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to our second round matchup. Kirk Cousins on the Falcons versus Josh Jacobs on the Packers. Seth, which one of these is the bigger fantasy impact? I feel like this is an interesting one to talk about.
Yeah, it really is. It really is because, we kind of laid out the case for Kirk Cousins already. I think the Atlanta Falcons get a lot more of looks here in fantasy drafts come August and even in some dynasty leagues this offseason as well. I'll probably still have to go Kirk Cousins, but I mean, you could make the argument Josh Jacobs because like it did have a lot of ripple effect. Like we saw Aaron Jones getting cut. AJ Dillon walked out the door as well. But, I still think this is like the same high-powered Packers offense we started to see as Jordan Love was coming down the pike. Convolutes things a little bit more. I think more targets go to Jacobs than we saw for Aaron Jones last year when he wasn't fully healthy. So like kind of like fucks up the receivers' values a little bit, but in general, go with Kirko Chains, baby. I loved him and his kids repping the chains in the Instagram photo yesterday as well. So yeah, give me Kirk down home in Atlanta.
We got one vote for Kirk Cousins. The chat, I haven't looked at their votes yet, but I am curious which way they're going to go. I'm tempted to go Josh Jacobs here. And the reason being Kirk Cousins, for fantasy purposes, just himself.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how big of an impact this is. Sure. Probably drafting Kirk Cousins in a similar range to where I'm drafting him before.
Absolutely.
But I think the reason I can't vote for Josh Jacobs is just how misused the fantasy assets in Atlanta were last year. If they were even used to half of their potential or 3/4 of their potential, maybe this would be a different story. Josh Jacobs going from a RB3 to an RB1 would be a huge fantasy impact coming over here to Green Bay. But Kirk Cousins potentially elevating Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, the entire Atlanta offense is more impactful. I'm with you. It's got to be Kirk Cousins, but I love this Josh Jacobs signing. I'm probably more excited about the Josh Jacobs signing. Just the ripple effect of a good quarterback coming from a terrible quarterback is so much bigger. It's hard to ignore.
And it's crazy too. Like Josh Jacobs is definitely more of the surprise, right? Like I don't think anyone had him going to the Packers. And if you did, pull those effing receipts and take a victory lap. Like pat yourself on the back because I don't think anyone saw that one coming. And so yeah, really, really great signing overall. But yeah, man, Kirk Cousins just elevates this entire Atlanta organization, like the city. I mean, if you're in Atlanta this week, like you're probably partying like hell. So good on you. Good on you, Kirk.
There was one guy who on Twitter, just a random Twitter account, started calling the Calvin Ridley to the Titans one. Another one that seemed to like come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And was right. And people started freaking out. And then it reminded me of, it was either last year or a couple of years ago. I can't even remember who the player was. I just remember on Reddit, somebody broke a signing because they were in an Xbox Live room with a player who heard his wife talking to him about it in the background. And then he broke the news via a Reddit comment and people were clowning him. And then the next day the signing happened. And all of a sudden I was like, no freaking way. This dude really was in an Xbox Live room with them.
Dude, the way news gets out in 2024 and even before, like it's crazy because we're all so connected. There's tea leaves everywhere. You just got to be able to read them. So good on that guy for swinging, taking his shot, man. I'm sure he is happy to this day that he's living in infamy for that.
That's funny as hell. Andrew down here said Darnell Mooney might be the sneaky wide receiver to own in Atlanta. Andrew, don't get my hopes up again. If you guys were here 2 seasons ago, you might remember that I had Darnell Mooney as a top 12 wide receiver in fantasy going into the season 2 years ago. I was all in. I loved the tape. I loved what I saw. I thought him and Justin Fields were going to develop a little bit. It was pre-DJ Moore coming over and never quite materialized. I'm not buying all the way into Darnell Mooney again, but his value is probably higher than it was in Chicago in an offense that wasn't passing a lot till the back half of the season. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, I think so. I think the cog here is, do they add someone in the draft? Because this is a pretty deep wide receiver class. They could add someone on day 2 or even early day 3 that could potentially take that wide receiver 2 role. And they just added another receiver. I can't remember who it is off the top of my dome. Maybe the chat can let us know. But I thought it was a slot guy that fit in for. Oh, it was Rondale Moore. They traded for Rondale Moore.
That's right.
They
traded Desmond Ridder for Rondale Moore.
Yeah, so they're taking shots, they're taking swings, but Darnell Mooney is still Darnell Mooney, and like shout out Mulugeta who got him this freaking bag. That's a crazy bag. 3 years, $39 million for a guy who really hasn't done a lot in the last 2 years is quite surprising, and good on that GM.
Josh said, "Oh, I remember that, Simon. I'm sure you do, Josh." And Matt down here reminding us Ray McLeod as well. is with the Falcons now.
I'm pretty sure actually 2 years ago we had a similar bracket episode here on FYF, and it was late round wide receivers, and you were all aboard the Mooney train. I was on the Nelson Aguilar train that year in New England, so not a top 12 ranking or anything for me, but I'm guilty as charged as well in that conversation.
Well, in your defense, though, Nelson Aguilar probably gave people more wide receiver 1 weeks since that date than Darnell Mooney has. He's had a couple long bombs.
Maybe two. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Abisto said, "Oh God, yeah. You know what? We all got hits and misses. That was a miss for me." And Ladarius said, "Loving Kirk Cousins in this bracket so far."
It
just made sense. I didn't think they'd get it done. I really didn't think Atlanta would end up with Kirk Cousins as their starting quarterback next year. But they are, and he's moving on to the finals. We've got our next matchup. Poll is in the chat. I've got the first vote on this one. Saquon Barkley on the Eagles or Derrick Henry on the Ravens. Whoo! It's about as good as you can get for either of these players, right? Like a run-first team, high-powered offense, rushing quarterback. I think what the tiebreaker, I think what the tiebreaker for me is going to be is the style of running of each of these quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson has a tendency to open things up for the running backs that play with him. Not that Derrick Henry needs that, but I've seen him just clear lanes with Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis, some of the least mobile guys ever back there under center. If they're having to worry about Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, I'm in. I don't care if he's 47 this year. I'm drafting Derrick Henry as a top 5 running back. But Saquon's probably up there as well. You don't think he's getting up there?
Oh man, the thing with Derrick Henry and my co-host Eric Romoff pointed out on the IBT podcast Tuesday night was he's going to be volatile. Like you're going to have the 2 touchdowns, the 3 touchdown games with Derrick Henry. He'll probably toss a couple in the end zone as well because we know that guy's got a fucking cannon of an arm. But there's also weeks where he's going to get you 3 points. And he did that in Tennessee. And I think even we saw Gus Edwards occasionally do that for the Ravens this past year as well. Keaton Mitchell could be back in the mix. Maybe they grab someone on day 2 or day 3. And Justice Hill kind of came along as well. So I don't think you're off base, but I think there's more volatility to it. And that's why I'm sending to the chat here because I'm going Saquon Barkley because if you remember Saquon's best year, his rookie season, scored 100 more fantasy points than any other season of his career. What did he have that year? Well, he had Odell Beckham Jr., prime OBJ, taking the top off of defenses, opening things up. Well, now he's got A.J. Brown. Now he's got Devonta Smith. Now he's got Devontae Parker opening up that offense. So he's going to be ready. Let's go here. Give me Saquon.
You know what? I wasn't sold until you threw Devontae Parker in there.
There you
and
go.
Now I'm in. The chat is agreeing with you here. Josh said closest one yet in my opinion.
Agreed.
Absolutely agreed. And then Josh up your comments saying, I remember arguing between him and Bateman, Mooney and Bateman. Bateman got hurt, but I think we both lost there.
Yeah.
And Abitsa saying Fields is a lot better than people say. I tend to agree with you. I think there is a good quarterback in there. We saw flashes of it. We saw him and DJ Moore connect down the stretch. I was hoping to see him land on a team where maybe he would have the opportunity to start, but those options are few and far between at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like I've kind of been on like the Justin Fields doubter train for a couple of years now. Like last year, some people were tossing some futures out on him for MVP. Like the talk was getting fucking crazy with Justin Fields. Like I was never that far of a fanboy of him, but he's still a top 32 quarterback. Let's not kid ourselves. Like it's just the situation, and if he does end up somewhere, like I've heard the Eagles thrown around as a potential backup quarterback, and he has to, rebuild himself for a year. It is what it is. And we'll be drafting in the top 15 of quarterbacks probably a year from now.
And the chat is in a deadlock, 50% to 50%. The next one to get a vote will be the winner. I am watching it right now.
For Parker, baby.
We've got Saquon Barkley with 50% of the vote. Derrick Henry with 50% of the vote. If another vote comes in, it is game over.
Man, they got to do this for Devontae Parker. Let's go. That man.
Where are you drafting Saquon next year?
Probably early second round. I'll take the shot on for sure. Is that too high for you, or would you cough up a second rounder for him?
No, I think I'd cough up a second rounder if I'm drafting running back at that point. I want to see how the draft boards start falling this year. This past year, hero RB tended to make a lot of sense. You could get great value on a running back in the end of the first, early second, and then just punch wide receiver. I'm curious to see what boards look like this year. It is over. We got another vote, and Saquon Barkley on the Eagles is going to win it.
Let's go, baby.
By one freaking vote, which means we've got our championship. Kirk Cousins with the Falcons versus Saquon Barkley with the Eagles. You've got the first vote, Seth. What's it going to be? Who is the winner of this free agency bracket?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I didn't think we'd get here. I didn't think I'd get Saquon here, but you guys did it in the chat. You came through for our boy. So, oh man. Because like, listen, dude, I hated Drake London. Like coming out, like I thought Garrett Wilson and even Olave were the best 2 wide receivers in that class. And I took some shit. I took some shit in the DMs and the comments on Twitter for that take. And last year, Drake London proved to me this guy's real. He's the real deal. He had 180 some yards, and he just has not had a quarterback. So now we're getting a potential wide receiver 1 entering the fray of fantasy because of Kirk Cousins. We're getting potentially Kyle Pitts entering the top 6 conversation once again. Bijan Robinson going to be rock solid, as we mentioned. But I can't do it. I can't go against it. I live in Eastern PA now. The buzz is palpable here right now for Saquon Barkley. He's the next generation of Great Eagle. Give me Saquon and give me some futures on the Eagles as well. I'm back in, baby.
The Eagles all in. 1 vote for Saquon Barkley. And one point we haven't brought up for Kirk Cousins yet here is that he is coming off a pretty major injury. Yeah. And these are all assumptions that he will elevate the pieces there, that the coaching staff is going to change their offensive philosophy, that Kirk Cousins solves all of the issues we saw with this Falcons offense last year. That's a lot of assumptions. Yeah. I'm making quite a few of them. Know what I mean? Like I agree with a lot of those assumptions, but it seems a lot more of a sure thing that Saquon Barkley goes to the Eagles and is Saquon Barkley. There's a lot fewer pieces maybe relying on him. He just has to show up and be a good running back, which he is. He just has to show up and be what he is. I'm torn on this one, Seth. You made great points for Saquon. You made great points for Kirk Cousins. And I think the tiebreaker is going to be what we alluded to earlier. Kyle Pitts asked for one thing and one thing only. Thanks for his jersey number. And that was to sprinkle him with targets in every single game, baby. Yes, I'm voting for Kirk Cousins. It is tied, which means the chat is going to decide the winner of this bracket. Which free agency signing is it going to be, guys? Kirk Cousins to the Falcons or Saquon Barkley to the Eagles? Man. Abito in the chat says Kirk will have more of an impact on the Falcons and Saquon on the Eagles. Also wants to know, do we stream every day? Not currently. We're streaming 1 day a week on Thursdays at 3 p.m. But follow us on Twitter at Front Yard Fantasy to get updates on our streaming schedule.
I like that. I like that profile picture of a Ibiza. That's some type of car. I can't figure out what it is, but he's rocking something in there. So
we'll pull it back up and investigate in a second while we're waiting on the votes to pile in.
Yeah, listen, I threw the pronunciation ain't always great. We're from Pennsylvania. We're a little hickey. That's what we do out here, Matt. Palpable, whatever you want to call it. The buzz is real. The buzz is real, Matt. Believe that, buddy.
Pulpable is what an orange is. And Geek said the juice on Barkley signing is pulpable. Yes, yeah, the juice, man, it's worth a squeeze. And we don't even have to investigate. Abista letting us know it is a 2018 BMW M4.
Oh, okay. I like it.
My buddy drove a BMW, not obviously that new in high school, but a BMW sports car, and we drove it to prom one year, and that should have been illegal to let a 17-year-old drive a sports car.
Yeah.
I was sober, no drinking, but it should still be illegal to let a 17-year-old drive a vehicle that goes above 70 miles per hour.
Even worse, Simon, one of my buddies in college, student loans are a bitch. Student loans were also great for those who needed it. My buddy got, his student loan refund check one time, goes out the next day, he comes back with an M4. I'm like, what are you doing, buddy? Like, do you know how much those cost to repair? Well, guess what? He spent his next year's or next semester's check on, Simon, repairing that son of a bitch. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, guys, the votes are in, and it is not particularly close.
Oh, no.
Kirk Cousins, you like that? Is going home with the victory in this bracket. The top free agent signing. You know what? Maybe this is like the whole MVP debate all over again. This was just a quarterback's award to begin with. And Saquon Barkley, even though he might have deserved it, like how is he going to compete with a quarterback in the biggest fantasy impact bracket?
Oh, dude, yeah. I think when it comes to Kirk Cousins and what's gonna happen like down the line, there's a lot to tell, man. Atlanta still has some holes to fill in the draft. They have some capital. Like where would you take him? Do you think in a redraft? Do you still put him in that like quarterback 1, quarterback 2 range? You think?
Yeah, he's probably a like second half quarterback 1, like somewhere
Yeah,
between like out of the guys that you're hyped to draft. You know
for
what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah,
We
yeah,
get the Lamars, we get the Herberts, we
yeah.
get like those guys. Kirk Cousins is probably down there. Do you want to take an upside guy like Tua, who
Hmm.
could ball
Yep,
out and
yep.
be the bomb, or do you want to take Kirk Cousins and maybe get a little bit more security? I'll probably be drafting Tua in that range, but I won't fault people for drafting Kirk Cousins in that range.
Yeah, the guy you're shitting on down in Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, right in that range as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly. That's another great name. I love Trevor Lawrence. I'm just talking narratives here. He did not have a good end of the season.
no, they really fell off. But don't you worry, because Devin Duvernay's in town. He's gonna shake up the world down there.
Also, Abito, and you're saying DJ Reader to the Lions. That's a fun
Oh,
move.
they've
Before
been
we
quiet.
before
Wow.
we go, Seth, any honorable mention free agency signings or trades? Maybe a trade that's not on here, or a defensive player or an offensive player that we didn't mention that you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we kind of touched on Gus Edwards. I think he's going to be a really great play. Like, do I expect that the Chargers are going to get frisky here on day 2 or day 3 of the draft? Maybe go after a Blake Corum, reunite him with Jim Harbaugh potentially. But, dude, Jim Harbaugh loves to pound the rock. Gus Edwards is his type of guy. I'm a little shaky on Justin Herbert in this Greg Roman offense right now. Mike Williams out the door. So, you know, I like Gus Edwards. And also, if Tyler Boyd can land either in Kansas City or Pittsburgh, where he's rumored to go, I'm in. That's another homecoming. That's another Pennsylvania kid, Pittsburgh zone coming back home. So I could like Tyler Boyd a little bit too. That's one of my little sneaky links here, Simon.
We got Craig in here saying, I am late, but still love you all. What's up, Craig? Welcome in, my
Craig.
friend. Glad that you're stopping by. For me, I'm going to go with a defensive player, and it's just for the fun that it's going to cause. Christian Wilkins with Max Crosby on the Raiders defensive line is about to be a problem. It is going to be a problematic defensive line with those two. You've got like the angriest and the happiest man in the world lining up, both trying to murder you. Like Christian Wilkins, like is 100% playful. Like he's like yelling goofy things. And then Max Crosby is 100% anger. And you've got, it's got to be terrifying for opposing players having those two come at them.
Imagine if Chandler Jones just didn't like go off the rockers and they still had him. Then you got a little bit of craziness coming at you too, man. Holy cow.
Oh my God. That's what I'm looking forward to watching. So maybe not as big of a fantasy impact. Yeah. You know what? I shouldn't say that. We got some IDP folks in here. Could have some fantasy impact over there.
Yeah.
But it's going to be fun to watch. And it has an impact on me, a football fan, a Clemson fan, and a fan of enjoyment and joy. Seth, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on and hang out with us today. Talk some free agency. It's been a crazy free agency period so far.
Dude, it has been all gas, no breaks for sure. And keeping up with it all week has been very fun. A great break from the NASCAR world for a little bit. And Simon's always a great break from the real world to come hang out with you and Joey and JL and everyone at the FYF family and everyone in the chat, man. You guys have a great community, a great product over here. So just excited for whenever I get the call in to hang out with you guys, man.
And speaking of communities, they've built an awesome one over there at IBT. So make sure you guys not only follow Seth on Twitter at between_SethFF, but make sure you're following IBT Media at IBT_media and the entire team over there. They're not only putting out stuff to help you guys win your leagues, giving you some actionable advice, but they're a team of really great people. We've come to call them friends and enjoyed getting to know them over the past couple of years.
Thank you, man. Likewise.
That's going to be it for us today, guys. There's probably some more news coming in. We'll hit on that next week. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at Front Yard Fantasy. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Front Yard Fantasy. And I lied about our Twitter handle. It's Front Yard FYF. So maybe I should go back and change the order that I'm doing things right there. We'll see you guys next week. Until then, adios. Have a good one.